Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. This is episode 93. My name is Colin Moriarty. Today I'm joined by a very special guest indeed. He's the creator and designer of Twisted Metal. He was the director and designer of the original God of War. He even did Drawn to Death, which I think was incredibly underrated. His name is David Jaffe. David?
Well, welcome. Hello, Colin Moriarty. Listen, I think, do you smell that? You smell it?
Yeah. Something's cooking.
Something's cooking. It's the universe coming back in line because finally you've got the yin to your yang back. Listen, everybody knows the combo. And you goddamn right we're going to get into Greg Miller today. You goddamn right. The combo of your stoic, intellectual, brilliant libertarianism needs a bit of a yin to the yang, baby. And so I have shown up at the request. You think this is you inviting me on your show? This is a Patreon intervention. Oh, okay. I have been asked here by your fans. It's like, Jaffe, you gots to help good Sir Colin because he needs the sparkle, baby. So I'm here for the sparkle. I appreciate you having me, buddy.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you. It's always good to see you. You've always been fun to talk to. And yeah. We've told the story many times about the first time I ever interacted with you with Podcast Beyond and you not saying Beyond, like when Greg was interviewing you. I did not, yes. Which is so funny. It's so, I love that story. And I have a lot of really, you probably don't even remember some of this stuff, but I loved coming down and like when you were making Twisted Metal in 2012 and hanging around with you and the QA team. And I remember you just having a really great atmosphere there. It was fun. I don't know. You're a different kind. Everyone that knows you, I think, knows that you're a different kind of dude in the industry. Yeah. And so I think people are really excited to have you here as well. And I do appreciate you taking the time. You're obviously a busy man. You're a family man.
I am a family man. I do, but yeah. I love your show. I love what you're doing. Thank you. You're welcome. It's good people. So let's do it. Let's fucking talk about shit. Let's go.
Well, I'm wondering, the big question I've wanted to ask you for a long time, and just kind of diving right into it is, we talk about your outspokenness. I love how outspoken you are. You say what's on your mind. You always have. Yeah. You used to give the Sony PR people nightmares. It was so funny.
Oddly enough, from what I understand, I kind of still do, but yeah.
Yeah. I would imagine so, knowing the characters over there. And I was wondering, do you feel like your outspokenness has cost you anything? Do you feel like it's cost you opportunity or sure. Like, I'm not even sure you get the credit you deserve, to be perfectly honest with you.
I appreciate
what
that.
You did. Yeah.
Sure, it has. I mean, I spoke to a couple of people last week because this actually, oddly enough, came up on the streams I was doing, and they said to me, there's two people said this to me. They were like, your way of delivery of things intimidates certain people. And I was like, okay, I guess I can sort of see that. I guess I can sort of see that. But it's not consciousness, or it's not conscious. It's not like I'm sitting around going, I'm going to be this character. I'm going to be this guy that's outspoken. And when I'm off the mic, I'm not that, I put a premium on genuineness. I put a premium on honesty. That doesn't mean I have a monopoly on it just because I open my mouth more than anyone else. But I think when I see something, I say something, and I think that trumps a lot of other shit. I don't value a lot of the same things a lot of people value. I don't, I don't love material things anymore like I used to. So, but I certainly would like money. I want to make sure I take care of my family and stuff, but I'm not, sure. I don't need the big house anymore. I've had the big house. I sold it. I don't need the big, kudos anymore. I've gotten every award my industry can give, and I gave those away to fans. I don't need the fancy schmancy cars. I mean, all those trappings of things that you get if you play the game really lost their appeal to me once I got them and realized, oh, well, I'm not any happier now than I was when I didn't have them. And if I have a microphone, you know, I'm going to use it. I don't mean literally, although at this moment we're talking literally. I'm going to use it to either A, express things that I think are worth expressing, or B, allow myself to interact with people who know more than I do and say, talk to me about this, explain this to me. So people sometimes get confused because they're like, Jaffe, why do you entertain trolls on your stream? Or why are you like, you know, I've said before, I'm like, hey, if you're a member of the KKK or if you're a anti-Semite, I would love to talk to you. And they're like, you're giving them a platform. I'm like, it's not like people don't know these assholes are out there. It's not like anyone who's going to be influenced by a fucking KKK moron doesn't know where to look. But I want to know what makes these fuckers tick. I don't support them. I think they're horrible people, or at least horrible ideas. I think fundamentally everybody's just an afraid, scared person trying to get through their day, and they got knocked down a really terrible path for some reason. But ultimately, though, I'm fascinated by this shit. So I'm outspoken because I get one shot at this life. Why would I just be this little, you know, dude in the corner just all like, oh, I don't know if I should say something. That's a ridiculous way to live to me. That's a long answer, Colin. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. Dude, yeah. I want to talk to you. This is a great answer. And I can relate to some of what you're saying, I feel like, because I feel like, the more outspoken you are, maybe not only in our industry, but generally speaking, you see it in politics and entertainment, the more that people kind of try to project certain things on you.
Yes.
And it becomes easy for them to do that. I become really fond of Glenn Greenwald, the political writer in recent years. And he's very similar, where he says whatever he wants. And so people attack him for that. But I agree with you. It's worth the risk of being attacked to say something meaningful or poignant, as opposed to being the same as everyone else. And that's why I know the way the industry works well enough to know that it must have cost you something. And I think it's awesome to... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, it probably has, but, and you're in a different position because those things have been more spelled out for you. Like the PAX thing, it was clear. Oh, whatever you did, which God, I still don't know, clearly cost you. You could say, oh, here's one thing that's concrete. It was the PAX panel, right? I don't really, I reached out about 3 weeks ago to, I'm not going to say their name. Fuck it, I will. I reached out a couple of weeks ago to Amy Hennig. And I don't know her that well. We've had nice conversations in the past, but I'm like, oh, she'd be great to have come on the stream and let's talk about games and what she's doing now and how she's trying to branch out to more, how do you bring people in to video games or interactivity that are more mainstream people that aren't used to having sort of the intimidation of choices when they're sitting down for their entertainment. Well, I reached out to her on Twitter and I reached out to her on Facebook where we're friends, and I haven't heard back at all, right? Now, that could mean that she's busy. She didn't get it, but there's probably about 40% of the people who usually in the past would have gotten back to me have not gotten back to me at all now. And so I'm like, is that because some of them are now going, this guy is problematic given that he's got such a big mouth, blah, blah, blah. And now he's using that big mouth in a platform that's just open to the world. Yeah, I'm sure some of them are that, yeah. But, I don't care. I care in the sense that it would be nice to talk to Amy. That'd be awesome. But I think it's this, what it is? I think it's this kind of, and maybe you've led the way, or you've been one of the key guys leading the way on this, where PR is only as powerful or as you let it be, right? As you say, I mean, you've got one of, if not the, I think it might be the most successful Patreon sort of geek culture video game things going on. You don't need Sony's early access codes. You don't need Neil Druckmann to come on your show and talk about, oh, well, let me tell you the bullet points of why Uncharted is really good, right? Or Last of Us or whatever. It's like, that's not, everybody can get that. It's like anyone who plays the game, it's like, it's like this last week, it's like, oh, look, I got Resident Evil Village, 3 hours before everyone else. Yay, my viewership will go up 20% for about 3 hours. And then no one will care unless you're connecting with your audience and being genuine and open and offering something.
Exactly.
And so, I think it's just, has it cost me? Probably. But, and would I like to keep doing what I'm doing? I just signed a deal. I'm doing something with these guys in Poland named Movie Games, which is really interesting. I'm doing my streams, which I love. But, do I want to go work at a grocery store if everything falls out? And no, but the people at my grocery store are nice.
Right.
And I'm like, well, so what? It's like, I'm not going to, God, it's just, I think you just go back. Maybe there is something called reincarnation, like maybe that's real, or maybe we've been around a couple of times. I don't know what it is, but for some reason I have a very strong view that you're here. Why are you living small? Why are you being quiet? Like, and I don't mean that like I'm trying to be a motivational speaker. I mean that like intellectually I can't suss it out any other way. It's like, why? It doesn't explain to me the logic, and maybe I'll come around to your side, but why, what are you waiting for? Is kind of what it feels like to me.
Sure. It's what you're saying is so relatable, because it's that, at least maybe we react to this differently because you're saying it doesn't affect you too much. It used to affect me a little bit in just not knowing, like that mystery, right? You reach out to PR and you don't hear back, and you're like, well,
right.
I've been in this game so long, sometimes they really do mystery emails, but I know typically they know what's going on, and then you just start getting ignored over and over again, and then you have to kind of start reading into things, and before you know it, you're forced out of the system. And we were just able to kind of embrace that, I think, because I agree with you. I remember, David, like what it was like to get a game early at IGN. We used to get games early all the time. You tweet it out, you feel cool, you're playing it online, your friends see it on your friends list. It's something that everyone falls into, and then that kind of loses its luster. At least it did for me. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck about this. I want to just like enjoy video games. I want to play them. I want to make them. I want to do all these kinds of things. And so it is liberating to be outside of that. And it is just frustrating knowing that people continue down and mimic often the same people that they see, not realizing that a different kind of voice is needed in order to proliferate if you want to exist outside of the system. I feel like a lot of people are saying the same exact things. So when that verbiage ping pongs off of all these different people, well, of course I stand out. Of course you stand out. I mean, it's not even, I often tell people, I'm like, I'm not even sure what I'm saying is necessarily that poignant. It's just different. And people just want to hear something different. And that's why I think people embrace you as well.
I think people want to tune into things like what you do and what I've started doing, and just people want connection. They want to, your story. I was telling Dustin called into my stream last week, and he's like, dude, can I please, I want to leave, Colin's group. They're awful and they crunch, and Jason Schreier's writing a whole article on it. Can I come work with you guys? And I says, Dustin, no, I don't poach people. But after we talked about that, look at Dustin's like, do I come in? No,
stay out.
Fuck, now I lost my train of thought. But you know what? The joke was worth it. God damn it, Jaffe, you old man motherfucker. Colin, what were we talking about?
Oh, we were talking about you had brought up Dustin calling into your stream the other day, and I was talking about people saying different things and just having something different to say.
Oh, right. So I don't remember. The point is, though, yes, goddamn, Colin, that's bad, baby. I've been doing weed more since it's become legal here.
Yeah, it's all good.
And it wasn't. Well, no, I'm not ashamed of it. I'm just saying that I'd done it a little bit in the past, just whatever. I wasn't a big drug guy. And then it became legal, and I'm like, fuck it, I'll try it. And it really is like, I joke about it, but it's ordering a pizza. There's a website, and you just go, I'll take that, and I'll take that, and I'll take that. And the guy's at your door, and he's not some guy with a gun in his fucking waistband. He's just like, it's Milt, or it's Fred, okay, hey, man. You get your weed in a nice little bag and shit, and then you're off to the races, man.
Are you using Ease? Is that what you use? EAZE?
No, I'm using Torrey Hills Dispensary because
cool, local joint.
Yeah, nice. Well, the Ease people were like, okay, we need you to take a picture of your driver's license. We need you to take a picture of your credit card. Fuck you, I'm not giving you that shit.
Right.
So these guys are local too.
Cool.
I was playing Resident Evil Village the other night, high as a goddamn kite, and I'll tell you something. A lot of people, and I don't know if they're faking it or not. They must not be. I don't fucking know. But it's like a lot of, I'm scared. Games scare me. Games like that. I don't know if I can make it through. I'm like, really? You're a grown-ass man. You can't sit there and play a fucking horror video game? You know, and I've been on horror movie sets and stuff. So maybe, you know, I love horror, though. It's one of my favorite genres. But what I realized the last year is if you watch horror or if you play horror high, it gets you back to that lizard brain, and it is so much fun because things actually scare you again, like when you were a little kid. And I'm like, oh, this is delightful. I mean, you can't solve puzzles worth a damn because, you know, but boy, I'll tell you what, man. But anyway, okay, back to talking oh, right. Okay, I know what it was. The people who are saying things and kind of continue to sort of toe the line of expression and doing reporting. I don't do reporting. I would never even, I covet, I fetishize good reporters. I would never want to be a reporter. I don't consider it's a ridiculous concept, but people who are in that industry proper and are doing what you're saying, which is kind of mirroring kind of the standard and don't necessarily, whether they understand or not, if they're getting ahead or not, who knows? But, I find them benign. I find them boring. And I also find that I wouldn't want guests on my show if it's like, okay, yeah, you can have, like, I have Troy Baker coming on this week. God, I hope he doesn't Google me. Because he might say, fuck this guy. But
he's always been really nice. He seems like a nice.
I've heard some of his interviews. He seems very introspective. He seems like he'll be a good conversation.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
But the point is, though, it's like a lot of these people, it's like, yeah, you can have, you know, Corey Barlog back on your stream. Corey just called in, you know, on his own. But I'm sure if he went through Sony PR, it's like, here's the things you can ask. Here are the areas. Go fuck yourself, motherfucker. Yeah. You think I want somebody on my stream that I can talk to based on, why would I want that? Why don't you just send me a fucking sheet of what he's going to say? And I've been the guy reported on in that. I've had interviews. The last one I remember was with who was the guy? Was it John? He ran the Rolling Stone video game group for a little bit.
John Davidson.
John Davidson, good guy.
Yeah.
I like John. But we did this interview in San Francisco, and I was just very open, as I always am. And I'm with my PR guy from Sony, and as I'm heading back to the car, the PR guy's like, okay, I'm just going to hang back with John for a few minutes. And I'm like, okay, I know what this is. This is him cleaning up what we just did, right? And I'm like, why would you want even somebody on your show that's handled like that? It's like, I would rather have somebody you've never heard about that we can have a good chat. And, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not a moron. I'd much rather have someone you've heard about and are excited to hear because you'll get more ratings. But, you know, do you really need to hear somebody come on and say the same fucking shit they said on IGN, on Game Informer? It's like, oh, fuck that shit.
It reminds me of just like when on the Sunday shows, which I really like, you know, the Sunday political shows.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, you know, so it's like when Fauci's on and he's on every episode of every show that week.
That's
so
right.
You just start skipping it and it's boring. I totally agree with you. I don't like the canned stuff. And it's funny. I don't even bother. I haven't talked to any PR people in more than 2 years, but I used to ask PlayStation back in 2018 or 2019, like, can I have Neil Druckmann? Like, he's a personal friend of mine. Like, can we just have, he would be very happy to sit down and talk with me if you would just let him. We don't even have to talk about the game. I would actually like to talk to him about what his favorite books are or something.
Right.
You know? And they were like, no way. And it's clear that they're hostile. It's funny. You will find this funny. My ad reps who are totally unassociated with Sony, during The Last of Us Part 2, there were a bunch of that. They did that podcast series, if you remember, like that Last of Us podcast series was like some sort of accompaniment. Anyway, they were going to sponsor, like my guys came to me and were like, oh, Sony's going to sponsor your show for The Last of Us. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't even say anything to them. Like, as it got closer, the day got closer, I'm like, this is totally going to get pulled off when PR and marketing realized that they sold, 50 different podcasts and one of them is mine. And lo and behold, I didn't even say anything. I'm like, it is never going to happen. And lo and behold, it never happened because because the target is on us. But
why are you so? Because I mean, seriously, I read the farthest I've gotten in this, Sherlock Holmesian quest mystery is when I say to people, "You're going on Colin's show. Colin's awful. Colin's a racist. Colin's this. Colin's that." I'm like, okay, well, really talk to me about that because I've talked to Colin a handful of times. He's never seen, anything other than a really cool, interesting fellow. I'm sure I don't agree with him on everything. But so what? Why the fuck does that matter? Right. And the only thing they can point to, is there's a tweet that you did, not the day without a woman or whatever, the tweet about, the Asian American folks.
Right.
And I say, okay, well, do I think that's a racist tweet? Yeah, it's a racist tweet.
Interesting. I don't, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, but it's not a I'm Colin Moriarty, I don't like Asian American tweet. It's a, in my opinion, when you are not, this is not me, this is you speaking, not in Colin's opinion.
I understand. Yeah.
When you are attributing positive attributes to a group of people, the fact that they're positive makes it not racist. Racism has to have a negative connotation. Then you're just into semantics. I would say no. I think anything where you're attributing to a race, but it doesn't matter. The point is, it's irrelevant. You're not saying I don't want Asian Americans in America, I want them gone. You're just saying my take on something is it's okay to say that from your research and your observations, this particular group of people have a higher percentage chance of making more money, of being more, educated, maybe being more successful in business based on these criteria. And I'm like, I'm not insulted by that. I don't agree necessarily, but so what? But the bigger point is that's the only thing people can send me.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
and I'm like,
I don't even delete it. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm actually, can you, I'm like, is there a smoking gun that everybody has, that Sony PR has, where it's like, dude, you should, I know there's pictures of Patrick Klepek fucking signs and shit and talking about it's rape time and talking about hate crimes and all this. I'm like, oh, there must be that, right?
No, there's nothing like that.
I know there's not, but that's what I'm saying. So why are you, what's this one guy, Bob somebody?
Oh, Bob Mackey. Yeah, that was
he was an IGN guy, right?
Yeah, he was at 1UP, and we bought 1UP, and then he was laid off. When 1UP was shut. So it's kind of sad. I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of him. Like, when IGN shut 1UP down, they hired everyone from 1UP on the IGN except for him. He was laid off. Like, all of them were taken. So it's like, Jeremy Parrish and Jose Otero and all those guys.
Was that where that resentment came from?
I think so. I don't really even remember interacting with them. So it was, that's the one dude I was actually kind of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, I will say that was, and I'm not scared anymore, but that was the one interaction, the one person that I'd ever interacted with on the internet where I'm like, I'm 95% sure you're not going to do anything to me, but I'm not 100% sure. I mean, and I've never really felt that way, like, to be honest, where it's like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I deal with a lot of tough guys and I don't believe anything they say. And then I'm like, one person who actually knows me and all of this, I'm like, well, I'm not going to, like, maybe I'm being a little too flippant, but that was years ago and we haven't had any. And I mean, I have much more staunch enemies these days, I think, than in the minors.
Well, okay. To him specifically, I mean, I bring him up. I rarely block anybody. I try not to block anybody.
Me too.
But he's a guy I finally had to block because I'm just like, dude, I don't know you. I don't care if you don't like me. That's okay. We can still follow each other and engage. But yeah, I'm not going to just, take your constant abuse, not because it hurts me. It's just kind of like, it's weird. It's like, it's kind of creepy. So, but
exactly.
But no, I don't, A, I have a really big dog. B, I have really big weapons.
Yeah, of course.
And,
guns.
I don't talk about a lot of things, but that's how that's how I consider. I mean, I'll talk to you off air, but that's how I consider me and my family safe. And also, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'm a little crazy, if I may. I'm not like Joker crazy. Although Joker would tell you he's not crazy. That's the best scene in that whole fucking movie, where he just looks at that guy and says, "No, I'm not." And he says, "Are you crazy?" He says, "No, I'm not." But I'm not afraid of crazy. I kind of like crazy. It's like, it's like your surreal expression of your madness doesn't send my knees quaking. It makes me go, this is fascinating. I think I can kill you before you can kill me. And that's not like a challenge. I'm just saying. So it doesn't affect me in that way, but we'll see. Well,
I think you were kind of
That's the worst thing to say. And then someday I am going to get killed by someone, and they'll play that clip of like, I don't know. We'll see. Fade out. David Jaffe, 1971. Whatever.
Yeah, to whatever day we'll see in the future.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think you were asking a little bit before, like, well, why me? Like, why am I the punching bag, right? And it's I really think that my theory about this, and people might disagree, I think it's not very complicated, is I'm not a Trump voter, but I was an avowed Republican for many years. I consider myself moderately conservative. I come from Long Island, which is Trump country, but a different kind of Trump country. It's like the affluent, and I don't come from an affluent background, but Long Island's like money Republicans, not social, like we're what would be called Rockefeller Republicans, which is like we're pro-life or pro-choice and, pro-gay marriage and all that kind of stuff. So I think, but I was an outspoken supporter of Trump supporters in 2016 and often defended them and why they would vote this way. And so
I can't stand Trump, but I understand why his voters were enamored. I
do too.
And I
understand
also
more than ever, actually.
And I understand why that was a great opportunity for the Democrats to say there's this whole group of people that they're Americans too, and we're shitting on them and we're ignoring them. And yeah, some of them are racist, some of them are stupid, but there's a lot of fucking stupid assholes in the Democratic Party too. And so no, Trump was a disaster. The people who try to take over the government should fucking be in jail right now. But do I think that if you voted for Trump originally you're a bad guy? No. Do I think if you voted for Trump in 2020 you're a fucking moron? You're probably a little bit of a moron.
I don't know if I go that far. I mean, because what I was saying was that I'm the closest thing that a lot of these people have been exposed to a Trump voter. I'm the most accessible kind of. I'm in that circle. I mean, I have Trump voting family, and
I do too.
Yeah, exactly. And so like that's my whole thing, Jaffe, is like I don't understand talking in such broad strokes about groups of people when I know damn well that what is being said about them is not true, and I don't believe that Democrats or left-leaning people have a monopoly on righteousness or goodness or kindness or decency. Right. And so like just saying those very basic things was tantamount to some sort of revolution in games media. But what people don't realize, and I think a lot of these people are kind of newer to the industry, but is I was saying this stuff at IGN for many years. It just wasn't that. I mean, people read it and it was circulated, but it wasn't like this big deal. It was like, oh, they have someone with a different voice on their site, and so does X, Y, and Z. And now you can go into a newsroom, IGN's newsroom, and say like, hey, the example I always use is like go into 30 people at IGN and be like, oh, who likes RPGs? And 10 people raise their hands. And who likes sports games? And 7 people raise their hands. And who voted for Trump? Who's a conservative? Who believes who's pro-life? Who comes from a red state? Like it's, and that's the thing, like, that's where I think that the essence of diversity is. That is, to me, the essence of diversity. Famously, I asked Danny O'Dwyer, who I think is a schmuck, but at the time I asked him, because he was like, race this, race that. And I'm like, Danny, you're from Ireland. I'm from Long Island, New York. I grew up in a town with lots of black people. Do you think that me and the black guy down the street are more or less similar than me and you? Because I think me and the black guy down the street are more similar. Okay. You think that we're similar because of the color of our skin. Right. But you grew up in Ireland, thousands of miles away in a totally different environment. It's absurd. The absurdity of identity politics is what I think a lot of people are running away from. It's not to say that people don't have the right to be proud or to live their lives to their specifications, but to shove that shit down other people's throats to such a degree that they become a villain when they're really just doing nothing but living their lives themselves is, I think, unacceptable. And I'm very happy to speak for those people, Jaffe. I'm very, very happy to speak for them. Like I'm glad to do that.
Yeah, and I can understand that position, and there's what's the word? There's an amount where not only do I understand that position, I agree with it, and I would be right there with you. I think there is obviously, one of the things that I do think is a valid criticism of the right, just like there are valid criticisms of the left, is that what gets amplified is the worst behavior of the right. And so that is what the left sees, and that is what they associate with all of them. Just like the right, not I'm speaking for everyone, but you know what I'm saying. But just like the right will look at, oh, you fucking libs, you're all the fucking same, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, this is more of a reflection of our, shitty ability to have discourse in this country than it is actually left hating right, right hating left, because the vast majority of people are not. Do I think the vast majority of white people in America are fundamentally racist? Sure. You
really?
are. Oh yeah. I am. You are. We all are.
Interesting.
But that, we can have that. I want. Yeah. But I don't think we don't like black people. I think it's a totally different thing, right? But I think the vast majority of left and right people are just trying to live their fucking lives and have a good time and be good to everybody that they can. I think it's those fringes that the media makes money off of, and that is salacious and people click on because it's entertaining. That's the fucking bottom line. It's entertaining. The news knows it's entertaining. People want entertainment. And all of that comes from, frankly, in my opinion, just the wholehearted embrace of capitalism. And I'm into free market. I got nothing. I don't oppose the free market, but and I don't think we should be a totally socialist country. But there is so much. We're not evolved enough as a species to handle the kind of capitalism we have. We are greedy because we are scared, because we don't understand what this fucking world is. It is chaotic. It is scary. People die in a blink of an eye that you don't expect. People lose their homes, their health. And of course it makes sense that people are just scrounging like fucking rats in a sinking ship trying to get onto some kind of dry land. And it creates this behavior that the worst of us is just cruel and mean and incredibly hurtful. And I think that's, if we don't really get down to the root of that stuff, everything else is just theatrics. Everything else is just, CNN can have a town hall about shooting after the shooting in Florida. And it's like, oh, we're doing good. Yeah, you're doing good. But you're also bringing people to your network. You're also covering it nonstop. And
it's an ulterior motive, of course.
Right. I mean, so there's a lot more going on under the surface of all this shit that it's almost gotten to the point where unless we're going to have the real conversation, not you and I, but in terms of America, unless we're going to have the real conversation about the foundational problems, then I'd rather just talk about the weather because it's irrelevant, because there's this stuff is baked into the DNA. It's baked into the cake, man.
But isn't it? I mean, my whole thing with this is like, because I also lament this kind of breakdown, right? This this inability to talk, this kind of inability to be curious. Yeah. And which I can't relate to. I just can't relate to that at all. I totally heard what you were saying earlier when you were saying, you'd like to have a KKK, like a Klansman on, or like a Black Panther or something. And I totally agree with you. I think that stuff. I've said before that I've really been interested in reading the Turner Diaries. Do you
just by the way, for your audience, I don't associate. I don't link KKK and Black Panthers. They're very different. They're not analogous in my opinion.
I understand. I'm just trying to throw in some different racial extremist groups.
All right, fair enough. Turner Papers.
I was going to say I've always wanted to read the Turner Diaries, which is like this novel written by like white supremacists in like the 60s or 70s.
Oh, I've never heard of it.
But it's the book that like is always found at the scene of like, it was in Timothy McVeigh's house. It was in like the Unabomber's house. It was, and I've been saying to people, because I've read Mein Kampf and, some Marxist stuff and all this, the autobiography of Malcolm X, not that I would put that on that level, but those kinds of things. And I'm like, I'm afraid of buying this book. Because
I'm going to buy it now. What's it called?
The Turner Diaries.
Remind me tonight at 8 p.m. to buy the Turner Diaries.
And it's...
Okay.
Now the FBI knows.
Now the FBI knows. And so it's basically apparently a book about like a race war in the United States and how like the white people win or whatever.
Oh, and I have heard about this. It's fiction. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
No, it's fiction. It's total fiction. And I was lamenting to someone. I was like, I'm very curious what this says so I can understand the mind of an extremist more.
Sure, yeah.
But I'm very afraid of buying it because I'm afraid, because I'm afraid that, like, well, two things. Number one, like, then there's going to be this record that I bought this book and they're going to think the wrong thing about me. And then the second thing is like someone sees it on a bookshelf or something, like, but I'm like, but it used to be that we were just curious people. Like, we would just, like, we need to know what the other side does. We need to know what they do. We need to know what they say. We need to know what they read. You know,
I don't know if it's right to romanticize what we used to be, because I think I think I know what you're saying, and I like to believe that too, but that's probably a good old days remembrance, because I don't think we would have done any better in the 70s or our ancestors in the 50s, 40s, 30s or whatever. Not that they were doing that great either, in a lot of ways, but the internet, I mean, when you had 3 networks, and you had government regulation that said, look, you know, if you're going to use our airwaves, this is sort of your obligation to the people. We're not looking for ratings. This is not about you making money with your newsroom. This is you doing a public service at 6 o'clock every night and 11 o'clock local, or whatever the rules of that were. Well, that got thrown out for the most part. Cable came in, the internet came in, and you can kind of forgive people for going, oh, I'm at a buffet in Vegas. I used to only be able to get the shrimp or the Italian. Now I can get anything.
Right.
I'll go to whatever the fuck that I'm already, you know, inclined to like.
Sure.
That has in so many ways been wonderful, but we're reeling, I think, from that as a society. We're reeling from that just explosion of data. And so I think I do have sympathy for overall mankind. It's almost like one of those science fiction books by like Clark or something, where man first encounters aliens and they're just overwhelmed. They can't even, you know, comprehend what they're seeing. I mean, to have this much data all of a sudden turned on, and suddenly, and it's been wonderful in so many ways, you know, marginalized communities finding each other and no longer feeling alone, and things like this, the ability to go, okay, fuck you gatekeepers, I'm going to do my own show, or I'm going to do my own music. But at the same time, it's been, you know, I think incredibly bad for, it's someone, I'm just going to ramble. I apologize.
No, please. You're the guest.
I know, but you know, there's a point where it's like, Jesus Christ, you're the guest. Will you go home? But there's a point where you kind of have to go. It's so much that while we have to go through this, we have to figure out how to acclimate to this wonderful new world. It's causing so much pain right now, I think, because there is no longer a sense of truth. And even though the truth in the past was a lie in a lot of ways, it was manufactured by the government in certain times. I'm not a big conspiracy guy, but I certainly don't think that the news was more accurate. The news was you know, it's very similar to what we were talking about with IGN and all the big game media. It's like, yeah, if you back in the day, if you only had EGM magazine and you only had Game Pro and you only had tips and tricks, they had to go through Sony, which meant that or Nintendo, which meant that their message was pretty much, it was the same fucking thing every magazine you read. Well, now I have a source at Nintendo. You have 10 sources at Nintendo. IGN obviously has the actual Nintendo people calling. It's going to be all, you know, it's a fucking free for all. And so I think it's good that it's a free for all because it allows freedom. But freedom is very messy, and I think we're, you know, I mean, the fact that you had people storming the Capitol and you had people literally thinking that today was going to be some historic day where the vice president would be hanging from a noose, and it would be like what, you know, not that these people, I get this since ever read any history books, but it would be like what they heard about, you know, happening, you know, when the country was founded. I'm just like, there were people out there that really thought that's what was going down, that they thought they were part of this, you know, 20 million man army that was going to march on Washington. And I'm just like, how do we get to that point where people are that easily manipulated? And it's because I fault them as humans, but I don't fault them as processors of information. I think we're all susceptible to it.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, I agree in the main with what you're saying, but it seems to me to kind of reinforce, like, the more curious we've become, the more decentralized we become in our curiosities. Many people have thus I think, kind of been trapped into their echo chambers where they're not necessarily curious about what's going on outside of their echo chamber. And that was kind of the point I was making with the Turner Diaries or reading anything else, where it's like, I don't need you to tell me what it says. I'm curious enough to know what it says so that I know in the future, like, holy shit, this is fucking bonkers. I can't believe people read this and put this on a shelf. And I guess what I'm saying is I want to get to a place where what's in your heart and in your mind is not necessarily judged based on your kind of interaction with things that are kind of drawing your attention around you as you begin to, or try to understand the greater scope of what's going on. And I feel like, as you brought up the Asian tweet earlier, and you were like, well, it's racist. I think I disagree with that. I think it's race. It's about race. I mean, it's certainly about race. It's racial, maybe, but like,
well, when I say it's how do you define racist first? That's what
I was gonna say is that, like, it's almost like the word selfish, where, and Ayn Rand talks about this, but it's like the word selfish has a negative connotation, but really when you break the word down very basically, it's about it being for yourself. And it's actually could be virtuous. My whole thing with, and I'm not saying it is or isn't, we can talk about Randy and shit another day, but my whole point is that we have to, I think, approach things with the most open and curious minds, even if we have, at the end of the day, we kind of know what the end result is. Like, I don't need to read something like that to know that the end result is racial hate. But I also didn't need to read, Mein Kampf to know what ended up happening in World War II. I just needed to know. I wanted to know. And
you're curious,
I encourage people that are curious to be able to flex those muscles, have the difficult conversations, like you said, or read the difficult books and interact with the different. And that's why I always try to invite people on my show that disagree with me so that I can, because I really do believe iron sharpens iron. I totally believe that. A lot of people give me credit for being smart, which I appreciate, but I actually think I'm just so used to defending my positions that you become good at it. Like, because when you're
it's
not,
also cold. We may have talked about this before. I'm going to come back to that. Keep going.
Well, no, I mean, that was basically the gist of it, was just that I just feel like, it's not so much like intelligence, or anyone can read a book. Like, I went to college, but anyone can go to college. It's about remaining open-minded. It's about kind of being, I think, also fair. And I try to kind of put that out into the world as best as I can, even though I feel like I'm treated in a very unfair way. I don't know that I've let it break me quite yet. And I try to, like, go into conversations and try to continue to invite people onto the show, put out my points of view and all that, in hopes to, if not bridge some sort of divide, which is not necessarily that important to me. If people want to feel a certain way, it's more understanding the other side. I'm really curious about it. And that's the only point I was trying to make. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. It sucks.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No. I was interested in what you were saying. It just spun me off somewhere. But here. Okay, let me ask you this. So,
sure.
From an outside perspective. I know what I was going to say. I'll get back to that. So, a lot of these media folks, I think what's interesting is maybe when you are on the left, and the left is so associated with education, intellect, discourse, which is ridiculous in a lot of ways these days, that maybe, unlike somebody on the right, or like a salt of the earth kind of fella that has something to fall back on, it's like, well, okay, we're not really, that's not our shtick. We're God-fearing, whatever. God-fearing is a ridiculous concept. Why would you fear God? It doesn't matter. But we have these other things that make up our sort of general, stereotype. But the left, maybe what it is they find it really difficult to engage in any kind of discourse that challenges their positions, because the very nature of doing it almost tears down the image they have of themselves as, but we're the intellectual ones. How could we be wrong? How could we, because I mean, I remember Scott Rohde, Scott, obviously, who runs, and Scott's one of my favorite people in the industry. And I've been scared to call Scott and say, Scott, come on my show, because I don't want him to have to say no, because I know Sony PR would probably not let him. But I think the world of that guy. I think
he's great. Very smart man.
Really good dude. But But I remember he and I were sitting down talking about the Drawn to Death reviews. And I remember I said to him, dude, I'm so sorry I let you down. He says, dude, I love this game. You know, I championed it from the very beginning. I have no regrets. He says, I think, you know, and I said, it's really weird because we did due diligence. We did numerous play tests throughout several years that always came back positive. We did mock reviews that came back, we didn't think we were going to get like game of the year, but we certainly thought we would find an audience that would dig it. And we did, but it was really small. And he said, you know what I think really got us that none of us, accounted for was the liberal games media that really looked at this game and they just took a fucking cleaver to it, because even though under the surface, I mean, what's ironic about this is one of the biggest criticisms that game got was how juvenile it was. And I'm like, motherfucker, it's the whole game is you're in the world of a 14-year-old's notebook. What do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, what is going to be War and Peace?
Right. and ultimately Scott's like, yeah, and there is this sweet story about a kid in a broken family that you actually can suss out if you play the game. But so many of these guys were just like, this is offensive and it's got bad language. And I had one journalist tell me recently, he's like, and he's a good guy, I like this guy, but he's like, I'll play games I review at home and my wife is always walking by and she doesn't like bad language, but it was the first game I ever played where she's like, can you please play that with headphones? Because that's very offensive to me. Wow. And I'm just like, dude, he's 14. Yeah. But anyway, the point is though, yeah, that group that we're talking about, I was never a Gamergate guy. I had huge problems with Gamergate, and even to this day, I really don't want to engage with them, because the biggest problem with Gamergate to me was, it was just like, they seemed so proud about not having any leadership. They seem so proud about not having, I'm like, well, where's your manifesto? Well, we don't really have that. We don't have it's like you have a movement that you say you care about, and yet you're unwilling to sort of utilize the tools that almost from the beginning of people protesting have been effective tools. So my guess is you don't really care as much as you say you do. You just want to shout at the universe, right? Because there are ways to make your message heard, and you guys are ignoring all of them, right? But of course I'd love good journalism. I don't think we need ethics and games journalism. Frankly, the free market will take care of. It's like if you honestly think Kotaku is unethical, then just don't read it. It's not like there's a lack of places to go to get your data. But what I will say, the Gamergate guys talked about for a long time, and I'm like, that's conspiracy horseshit. But the older I get and the more I sit on this side of the microphone, the more I start to realize they may have been right about the journalist cabal. And I know that I'm using, loaded language, but
yeah, I use that term, so it's okay.
I mean, there's a group of them that really seem to run in the same circles. And maybe this is just my perspective. I would not fight to the death on the idea that this isn't my perspective. I go, okay, that may just be, kind of like I'm internalizing it. It may not be accurate, but it sure feels accurate that there is the acceptable mainstream games media, and, there's a club and they get to decide who's in it and how you get treated.
Yes.
If whether you're a gamer or a whatever it is you're doing, and I've started doing I don't know what this
independent.
Well, you're a journalist. I'm just a guy. I'm just a fucking loudmouth.
Yeah, I mean, I got pundit maybe. I mean,
there you go.
I don't consider myself so much a journalist anymore, but
okay,
I was at one time. Yeah.
You're a pundit, you're a gamer, or you're a game creator. Either way, they have maybe literally a list. And, we know who we're talking about. We're talking about the Jason Schreiers. We're talking about the Klepex. We're talking about the Kotakus, the Polygons. Sure. And I like Crescente. I've always liked, there's people in that world I like.
Yeah, but he's almost been cast out of that circle too.
Yeah, but there's some in there that I wouldn't, I'd certainly feed them if they were hungry, but I wouldn't have a nice conversation with them. Because they seem like fucking nightmares. They remind me of going back to high school, and it's like the popular kid clique. And I'm like, really? What's wrong with you guys?
No, it's totally, that's evident. That, to me, that is evident. That is evident to anyone with two eyes. Like anyone who denies that is happening here in our industry and in other industries, I think is lying to themselves. And it sucks. Like it's what you said. They kind of put the talking points out there, and you can never get around them or win after that. And that's kind of where I feel like, not so much you, because you're quite far to the left, but where I come in, I feel like is I'm of the mind personally that the mistakes all seem to go in one direction, that everyone seems to pull in one direction, that all of the defamation goes in one direction. And then they'll pull, like, you know, in politics, they'll be like, well, Fox News is the biggest. And it's like, yeah, because Fox News is honestly the only one that's saying anything different. It's not that I agree with them, but of course they're going to be big. They're the only ones that don't sound like you. So that's the thing that really bothers me, is it just kind of feeds itself and it feeds this narrative, but it's really quite sad because I'm quite glad I said it the other day, very openly on Twitter. I'm like, the gaming industry is handing people like me the mantle of counterculture. Yeah. I'm a moderate conservative. Yeah. I have no business being the counterculture generally. I'm supposed to be more of the reactionary, but I'm actually the one that's saying, like, you should be able to say what you want, that you should have the freedom to express yourself, that you should have the freedom to make mistakes and all of those kinds of things, that you should live your life to your specifications. And I'm the one, and this is where I get upset when people bring up race to me. I'm the one who keeps saying to everyone that your skin color literally you should not be judged any differently based on any immutable characteristic. We should all be treated exactly the same and be treated fairly with kindness and love. Yeah. So regardless of how that actually plays out in the real world, and that's a totally different conversation, I'm anti-war. I'm a pacifist. I believe in a woman's right to choose. I believe gay people should get married. I believe in trans rights. Like all these different things. It's like, but
I guarantee you I'm more progressive than 99% of these motherfuckers. Yeah.
I am probably more progressive than many of them as well. I mean, that's kind of the scary thing, because shit, like, I believe in the decriminalization of drugs and the legalization of prostitution and all of those kinds of things. So, but they'll try to nail you in certain ways and you can never get out of it. And it's the biggest shame to me. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say that I'll give you a get out of jail free card. I'll tell you how to get out of it, but go ahead.
Okay. That's useful, because I was just going to say that the biggest shame is just knowing that there are normal, logical, and rational people in the audiences of these people. If you can just get to them, not that I want to become them to become fans or listeners of me, but just be like, I'm not what you think. And I just wish you would listen to what I'm actually saying, as opposed to the narrative. But please go on.
Well, no, I was going to say, the next time not that you talk to Greg anymore, but the next time you talk to any of these people anymore, and they're throwing stones at you, ask them, it's like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I'm a bad guy, but help me out. Have you ever covered, in the last 2 years, have you covered an Activision event? And if they say yes, then your get out of jail free card is, okay, so let me get this straight. You had an audience with Activision. Did you ask them about their tax evasion? Did you ask them about their taking over $300 million in tax credits from the American people? Did you ask them about literally changing their marketing for China to remove Tiananmen Square from Call of Duty? Did you ask them about the Blizzard Hong Kong situation, where people in Hong Kong are fighting for this thing that you say you care about, and ultimately these people are going to prison? Did you ask them, if you're going to put up all these, we support diversity, we support this, did you ask Bobby Kotick about how are you being so respectful of China when you've had over 1 million Muslims disappear into camps in the northwest region of the country? It's like, boy, I know I'm Colin Moriarty. I'm a bad guy. You're right. I'm going to hell. But help me out, because you are clearly righteous.
Right.
How did and it's like, how did you handle that, Andrea Renee? Oh, well, I just asked about the new features in Call of Duty. Oh, really? Then here's a thought. You see that corner down there? Could you please go down to that corner and shut the fuck up? That's your get out of jail free card. Okay,
yeah, because I appreciate that, and I agree. It's the same thing. No, instead I go host an event for another publisher, or I have Cyberpunk hashtag Cyberpunk 2077, ambassador in my profile. It's like, what?
Right.
And that's that. But I'll tell you, Jaffe, what I always bring up, and you listen to the show, so what you're saying would depend on many people having any sort of education. And again, it's not because I went to a good school and I have an education. You can educate yourself. And I've done that. And a lot of people have done that. It's not about that. But I always bring up Far Cry 5 as being the great example when so many of these journalist cabal were so upset about it and didn't understand it. And I was like, you dumb motherfuckers. It's supposed to be David Koresh. You know, it's supposed to be.
I wasn't even following. What did they think it was?
Well, because they were like, why isn't this anti-Trump? And what is this religious sect? And what is all of this? And I'm like, don't you even know what happened in the fucking 90s? In the 1990s, not the 1890s? You don't know that the guy with the big aviator glasses is supposed to be David Koresh? You don't even know that. And yet you have the audacity to write 1,500 words on how this game is racist because it doesn't bring up, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
There becomes a point where we're depending on. And I don't mean to be mean, but some of these people are stupid.
They are.
You know, and for some reason, they just have laziness and stupidity wins the day with a lot of these people. And I don't get it.
Well, I mean, it's also a question of, there's also a place of privilege, right? There's also, I had, and I'm going to blank on his last name. His first name was Andrew. He's got a great podcast, real sharp guy. He reached out to me and said, can I come on your show? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And he was just a wonderful guy to talk to. But he's a black dude. He was just on, I guess Kind of Funny does this thing where they bring on new voices. Mm-hmm. And so cause I had Hip Hop Gamer on the week before and he absolutely, I shouldn't have been surprised, but he went into naming names and he went into specific examples of how he has dealt with racism that's come at him in the games industry, specifically on the journalism side. And so I was saying to him, to hip hop, I was saying, how much of it is the way you present, because he is very much yo, it's Hip Hop Gamer. That's his, and he's like, that's not shtick. And I'm like, I believe it. I've known the guy now for about 8 years. He's never dropped character. He's that guy. You know?
He's got the belted. I remember seeing him at the different shows and all that.
Was that Cliff Bleszinski? No, that was Cliff Bleszinski in the '90s. That's Hip Hop Gamer now. If you remember, you probably weren't. I don't know if you're in the industry.
Well, with the chainsaw gun and all the cool pictures. That was.
That was before. Cliff used to go around with I think he hired little people with him, and he covered himself in gold. I mean, he was just out of his fucking mind. But yeah, he is. But anyway, but we started talking about code switching and about the idea of minorities, but specifically in this conversation, black people, when they are around white people, will adopt a tone of language and vernacular and types of speaking that will allow them to get ahead more. And I said to this guy, Andrew, I said, if I look at the various black journalists, of which hip hop was right. This all came out of hip hop doing a video going, why are there no prominent black game journalists? And the only ones that came up were like this guy Paris, who's over at Kind of Funny now, and this guy Blessing, who's new at Kind of Funny. And then Andrew was in between them in the conversation. And I haven't talked to Blessing or Paris, but I have talked to Andrew. And I said, I'm just going to say it, Andrew, and you tell me what you think. I said, when I hear Hip Hop Gamer, he's the only one that sounds different. I said, if I didn't know you guys were black people, like visually, I wouldn't know if you were white, black, Latino. You just sound bland. I don't mean what they're saying is bland,
right.
But their delivery is just very, and he's like, hip hop's like, that's Paris. Paris has always been that way. He's like, I don't know Blessing at all. I don't know what his style is. But Andrew is like, yeah, when I go on the mic, because my job is to, he's like, I'm playing the game. My job is to reach as many people as I can. I know the audience I'm speaking to. So of course I'm going to adjust and change in order to reach that. And it was fascinating to me because on one hand, you're saying a lot of these people are stupid, not those people, but people in the media. And it's like, I'm sure that's true. And I'm sure part of it is a lot of them look at who has been successful and they look at how they sand down their rough edges, which ultimately is what makes them interesting. And they go, if I do this, maybe I can make a living doing something like this as well. But if I go out there and I follow my own internal compass, which is exactly, I don't really believe in God, but if you believe in anything, even if it's just neurons firing randomly, well, of course you believe in that because that happens. But if you believe in anything, that's really, I think, what you're supposed to do. That's why you're here, man. It's like, yeah, you want to sand down the rough edges that make you maybe want to go out into a public place and like pull your pants down and masturbate into a plant. Like, I've never had that desire, but maybe if you do,
you're speaking from
maybe well, that was the Harvey Weinstein thing, but maybe if you do, you should work on that. But but I guess the bigger thing is, I said to him though, but it's interesting because I can say that because I come from a place of privilege. I'm not a rich guy, but I did well with Sony, and then me and my ex did well investing. And so I've been able to sit on my ass and sort of try this, whatever this thing is I'm doing for the last couple of years and love it. And I'm not worried about where my next meal is coming from. You're obviously doing well. You're not worried where your next meal is coming from. But if you're a brand new guy coming into the business, you're probably looking at that going, well, I guess this is what you got to do. So I don't even know if they're stupid. Some of them are, but I think some of them are just like, well, yeah, man, but that's the game. If I don't play the game, if I do, like Dean Takahashi, is that his name? Adventure Beat.
Oh, at GamesBeat?
GamesBeat. He literally had Bobby Kotick on his stage the other day, on his virtual stage, doing their yearly, conclave of all the big minds in games.
Right.
And again, I like Dean. I've interfaced with him a couple of times. Seems like a good guy, nice guy. But I'm like, how can you have access to Bobby Kotick and not ask the tough questions? And his answer to somebody on Twitter was, well, if I do that, I'll never get him back. I'm like, who gives a shit?
That's the thing.
It's like, take your fucking shot. You got him now. Pin him down and ask him.
I totally agree with you. At some point, because they feed it the teat. It's like you're saying, but I think that the more, see, here's the thing, Jaffe, is that I think the more astute amongst them will realize, well, that's what they're doing, but they're in a dead end. They're at a dead end. Red Letter Media is doing way better, and blah 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 is doing it, and Last Stand Media and Kind of Funny or whoever. Like, it's not even about the because I don't use this term, but like, it's not even about the so-called SJW stuff or anything like that. It's just about people, because Easy Allies, for instance, does really well, and they're what I would consider SJW, right? But they have their own audience, or look at like the biggest Patreon in the world, I think, is like a socialist podcast, so it's not necessarily about politics. I really think that the minds amongst them will realize it's just about people being different and being honest and saying different things and working outside of the mainstream, which I love Red Letter Media, for instance. Clearly they have no relationships with the publisher or the the movie studios. They don't need those kinds of relationships. And I understand that I speak from a place of privilege in that sense. I worked in this industry for a long time. I have a lot of experience and I have a name, but I had to fight for that name. And I feel like a lot of people are just willing to go with the crowd, but that's a losing hand. That's why I question some of their intelligence. I'm not trying to be rude, but when I see new people come in and fold in with, these nut jobs on Twitter that seem like they're children, I'm like, I don't know if you're really not only cut out for this, but very intelligent. And I gotta, because they're failing. Like, even like, what are you doing? It's not about what they're saying. It's who they are.
It is. Maybe it's just a lack of curiosity and interest in looking at why things are successful. I mean, it's funny. I said to Hip Hop Gamer the other day, we were talking about black journalists. I said, you know what? I can't name a lot of black journalists, but I can tell you there's about 4 video game podcasts, or not podcasts, but YouTube cast or whatever they're called, that I listen to, and they're all black centric. They're all run by black folks, and it's not. I didn't use this term. He introduced me to this term. It's barbershop talk, is what he said it was called, where they're not trying to be like, the professional speak. It's just like they're hanging out in a barbershop, shooting the shit, talking about something they love. And I said, but it's organized enough that it's not just some bullshit random podcast like, what's up, Fred? It's like, actually they're talking about games. And I'm like, I find it compelling, and their audiences are growing. And so, yeah, I think there is a premium on genuineness and honesty and whatnot. Let us switch topics, shall we? I want to talk about, because people said to me, you have to ask, and I'm going to ask anyway, because the Greg Miller thing doesn't go away.
No, it doesn't.
And let's talk about that, because I want to talk about the power of it. I want to talk about why it doesn't go away.
Okay.
Because it's fascinating, right? I mean, there's a lot, at some point, you got over that they recast Darren or Becky and Roseanne. It's like people fucking move on. But they're
I like the reference. Yes.
Yeah, but there people are like, I don't know what he's talking about. That's fine. The older I get, the references
I totally understand that.
I made a Back to the Future reference to one of my concept artists when I was at Bartlett Jones, and she just looked at me and I'm like, Back to the Future. She's like, she literally says to me, she says, "You're old." I'm like, fuck you, motherfucker. But anyway, but it is fascinating that narrative continues because I think here's my guess on it. My guess is part of it is everyone has had a sense, has been betrayed by someone that they're close to. And I can't speak to the narrative. You and I talked about it once on Fireside Chats, and I don't remember all the specifics, but I remember that correct me if I'm wrong, if I were to say that if there was a betrayal that happened, you were the one that got betrayed. I mean, that's a correct assessment, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's my point of view. Sure.
Okay. And then is it correct to say that the perception that people have because of that betrayal, there are some people that have a perception now of Kind of Funny, and Greg specifically, that he is not genuine, that he is more about making the cash, making the sale, making the deal, and that came before friendship.
That feels like what ended up happening. I mean, that's my opinion. I don't know.
I understand. Yeah. I'm not bringing it up to throw anybody under the bus. I've always been friendly with Greg. He doesn't respond to my tweets anymore, so he probably hates me now, which is fine. I don't know if that's true. That's me being sensitive, probably. But that said, though, I think that narrative probably has a lot to do with why people are still holding on to it, because everybody can relate to that. Everybody knows that heartbreak. And I'm not saying you were heartbroken, but I know I've been heartbroken by betrayal before. I've been heartbroken by people that I trusted and people that I felt really had my back, putting something like money or success ahead of that sense of loyalty. I mean, would you agree that's probably why? And also, you guys did a fucking great show.
Yeah, I'm very proud of the content we did.
Yeah, but I mean, do you think that's why it's still that people don't let it go, or is there another reason?
Well, I think it's interesting to hear from people. People write in to the show, and I take on Patreon. I actually answer every DM we get personally, and sometimes you get into these really deep conversations with people, and you meet people, and they have really fascinating points of view and all of that. And a lot of people still write in. They're like, we really miss you two together. We love Chris. We love Dustin, we love, all the other characters that you've gotten into your life. And I'm like, but you have to understand, it's hard for me to talk about, because I was actually thinking about this very recently, Jaffe, that it's hard for me to talk about the stories, the things I want to say, and kind of the clarity I want to give to the situation, because I don't want to make it seem like I'm degrading someone or talking shit about someone or trying to hedge bring up old things that are old wounds or whatever. I will say with Greg, like,
why not? Why is that? Maybe talking shit about somebody, but why is it wrong? Why is it shameful to have been affected by something so impactful and have it still be affecting you to this day? Why would that be something that shouldn't be brought up?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've never told anyone this. I'm going to tell you something. I guess the audience that I've carried this with me for a long time is when we were at IGN still, and it was the four of us, Nick and Tim as well, and we were going to leave. There was a feeling specifically with Tim that I shouldn't come at all.
How was that expressed? How did you know that?
We had like a meeting in like a meeting room at IGN where it was basically like, I don't remember the exact, I wish I wrote some of this stuff down, but it was basically like, we don't want you to come. You make Greg unhappy. And
really?
Yeah. And the thing that was said to me that I'll never forget, I will never, ever forget this. And this is why because I don't want to bring up like old wounds and make people get mad at everyone. But it's like, he said to me, you remember a conversation with Colin? That was like our first show that we did a long time ago. It was like before we left IGN, we used to do, for people that don't know, a silly like kind of interview show. It was called A Conversation with Colin. He said, if it was a conversation with Tim, it would have been just as big, if not bigger. And
Greg said this.
No, Tim did.
Tim said this. Okay.
And speaking on behalf, it almost felt like he was speaking on behalf of Greg at this time. And I still left with them and found it like kind of did the thing with them anyway, but I had to carry that with me forever, that like one of these people right off the bat doesn't even want me here, doesn't like me. and I have to like prove myself, even though I feel like I'm maybe the second most valuable part of this. No offense.
Yeah.
And that was really difficult for me. And I think that Greg and I at that point started kind of right at the very beginning of that relationship in Kind of Funny away from IGN. We started to split apart because I feel like people were coming between us. And I feel like a lot of it was being spoiled, like the well was being poisoned. And suddenly I wasn't seen as who I was anymore by him. At some point that changed, and I don't know.
But you guys were such great friends. That's a real thing, right?
That was a real thing. I love him. Like I understand. I always will. Like I would have done. There was a time in my life where I would have done anything for him. You know, like literally anything. Yeah.
I had a falling out, and thank God I've patched it up. The producer of God of War, Shannon Studstill. There was a point. She's one of my favorite people on the planet, but there was a point where I just was so mad at her because of something that happened that very much felt like a betrayal. And we patched it up, and I'm so glad we did. But yeah, even when I was at my angriest, I still had great affection for her. I still wanted nothing but good things for her. So I understand that. But when Tim said, so you guys were great friends, he says, you make Greg unhappy.
Yeah, I remember that's a quote for sure. I do remember that.
Okay, but how... Since when? I mean, since life?
I don't know. Because I think Greg had to deal with a weird version of me sometimes. First of all, we lived together, we worked together, and we never really got tired of each other. We never had a fight. Like, we really never got into like, fuck you, and we're not. It never happened until we were done. You know? This
may only be like a subreddit. Did you guys experiment, as people say, together? Is that what happened? And it just
what do you mean, like sexually?
Oh yeah.
No, we didn't.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
I don't give a fuck. So you were very tight.
We were very. I loved him.
The rumor is you were very tight. Greg, not so much.
Well, that's the way it feels in hindsight. Like,
I was doing another sex thing. Let me get off that and get back to this conversation.
Yeah. Tightness and bubble. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we're done.
Everyone's tight. Everyone's tight.
We're done.
So, as far I'm, teaches them. So, I feel like, to me, I felt so hurt in that moment, and I felt betrayed. But I can't stop in some way trying every once in a while to be like, let's try and talk. Let's fix this,
right.
And like, it's not been I don't give a fuck about Kind of Funny. I have to be really clear about that. Like, I'm happy for their success. I'm glad. I really, especially love Nick and Kevin. I think they're great dudes. I have no beef, and I have no beef with Tim as a person either. I just know that he didn't want me there, and it really hurt me and made it hard for me to kind of steady myself there. And I also know that I made a lot of mistakes. I was in a very weird mental place. I had just gotten out of a relationship. I was in another weird relationship. I was a lot of I'm not trying to, the buck stops with me, but a lot of things were going on in my life at that time. And I still, like, I reached out to him just a couple months ago with my new game. I just gave him a code. And part of me just wants to like hear back and just be like, do you care?
Did he say anything? Did he respond?
No, he was like, he's been nice. He's nice. He doesn't ignore me or anything like that. Cause like, well, we did that Vita Means Death shirt line, which we're going to continue to do.
Right.
And I was like, you're the only other person I've ever met who loves the Vita like me. Do you want a shirt? No need to wear it or acknowledge it. I just was thinking about you. And he's like, no, I'm good. Or that was like the response. And, part of me just wants to be like, we did. I think he thinks that I know that me leaving hurt the company. It might have irreparably hurt the company.
I'm confused. Were you asked to leave, or did you leave on your own? I thought you were asked to leave.
I left on my own.
Okay,
but
so
I think that it was getting to the point where I was
pushed out because of the tweet. That's not true.
Well, it was. I will say that the situation was not tenable. Like, it wouldn't have been. The writing was on the wall at that point. I think at that point, like I was on the clock. It was going to happen at some point. Either I was going to get removed, which they have the power to do because I only own 20% of the company,
right?
Or I just sell and get out. And at the time, I was like, well, it was a few things. I was like, I need the money to make sure in case I don't succeed. I had a lot of money put away too, but like, I'm a very fiscally sound person. But so I was like, I need the money, and I want to do right by the audience that really cares about Kind of Funny. I don't want to be the Yoko Ono and be like, I'm blowing this motherfucker up,
Right.
So I felt like, I'm like, I respect these guys enough, and especially Greg, who was a brother of mine. I'm like, I'm going to let you do your thing. I'm going to go do my thing. And it's interesting because this is something
one would think that would have created almost more respect for you on their part to go, okay, I'm going to step off the stage, let you guys have the light that you want and the way you want it. And now we'll even almost be closer because of that sacrifice. But it sounds like it didn't happen that way.
No, it didn't. And it's not like Greg's never said anything or done anything to me since then. That's like, you know, it's just that we've not talked, like there's been very little communication, and that's okay. It's just like, man, was that, it's hard for me to say. Cause I don't want people to be mad at him. It's just, and I don't want people to, it's just so awkward for me to talk about this publicly, I guess, but it's like, don't you care at all? You know, like about,
was he ever an emotive guy though? When you were tight?
He wasn't. He's
so
not.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, maybe that's his thing.
Not.
You know, look, let's analyze Greg Miller for a minute. I'm going to tell you something fascinating about Greg. And again, I like Greg. I'm not but I'm talking to you. I'm not going to fucking moron. I'm not going to talk about it. You know, we're going to fucking talk about it because it's interesting. So Greg and Conan O'Brien are the only two broadcasters I've ever experienced that when they are on, they are different as fuck. Like when Greg Miller is up at noon, or Greg Miller is the Roper Report, and all that shit, that is, you know, that's character, at least my perception of it. Because when we weren't filming, whenever I would work with you guys or him, I was like, you're not, that's like a switch for you. Right. And I don't mean that like in a like, oh, he's a sociopath or anything. I mean that like, you know, maybe the real Greg Miller, and he's not very emotive. Maybe he's a guy that needs to do a lot of work, like emotional work. And I don't mean that I'm a big fan of therapy. I'm a big fan of introspection. I'm not saying that like you need therapy. I'm saying maybe, and he's got a kid coming, which is wonderful. Maybe that will sort of trigger that kind of, that kind of growth. I know it sounds so condescending, and I'm sorry if it does, but it just seems like if the kind of person you're describing, a lot of this seems like it's on him then. Like he's got his shit he's dealing with, and that manifests in the way that you got treated.
Yeah, I think my assessment of this is that we had a very circuitous relationship.
I don't know what that, he would talk. What does that mean?
It would like a cycle. Like I would talk, he would talk. It just all worked, right? Okay. But when things got serious, when I was really upset or emotive or dealing with something, it was always me talking to him, and him just listening and maybe giving advice, but maybe just listening. And to his credit, I think at some point he's like, I can't deal with this anymore. And I think that's what Tim might have been saying when he's like, you make Greg unhappy. Whether Greg said that to him or not, that's something you remember when someone says that to you. You know? That's like burned into my brain. It hurts a lot because it's like, and I'm like, me, it kind of funny in some way for those 2 years was almost like not even the real Colin in some respects, because I was so nervous about a lot of the different things. I'm like, I felt like I was kind of losing grip of my friend. I also felt like I was kind of losing grip of like our product. Part of me was like, why didn't we just leave together and do this by ourselves? You know, no offense to anyone else, but like, we probably would have been just as big. And so I'm like, I'm trying to manage my relationship. I'm making mistakes, and people are mad at me at the company. And I remember being late for a recording once, and it's fucking huge blow up. And this was before I left and all of that. And I'm nervous. And maybe the only person that really knows this actually at this point is my now ex-girlfriend, who I used to say, I'm like, I'm scared like every day that I'm going to do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing or whatever. But at the same time, I feel like when I'm on the show or when I'm on Twitter or whatever, someone has my back, and I feel like I can be myself and do what I was brought here to do, which is to entertain and inform and all of that kind of stuff. And at some point, it just kind of blew up. And I think it happened so quickly, and it's such a flash in the pan in my mind, like that moment in time when I left. But it felt like, I remember being like, I felt like Greg was just done with me. And he made a choice. Whether he made that choice personally or professionally or anything like that is up to him. And I will say, like, it's funny, I'd never said this to anyone either. I'm so thrilled with the show that we're doing with Sacred Symbols, and Chris and Dustin are doing such a great job. When I came up with the idea to do the show in the spring of 2018, we launched it in July. I tried to get in touch with him to get his blessing even, and just be like, I want you to know that I'm doing this. And I couldn't even really talk to him or get in touch with him about that either. So it was like, it sounds sad because it's almost like a battered spouse, and I don't mean it like that. He hit me or abuse, but it's like almost like it's almost like you want to get that email one day, or you want to know, like, do you laugh about the things that we used to do, and is it important to you? And and the other thing is like, you bring up like how Greg always is brought up in association with me. It's not so much him on his own as much as it's like, I feel like I've lost a lot of the credit and that's why I was brought up earlier to you. Do you feel like I don't feel like you've gotten your credit. I don't feel like I've gotten my credit either. I feel like a lot of it has been robbed from me because that relationship disintegrated. And
right.
People forget that things like the Game Over Greggy show and Twitch streaming at all and having the Daily Show and stuff was my idea, you know? Right. And it sucks to kind of like lose, or like with IGN, with Podcast Beyond, they did Podcast Beyond 500 or whatever and didn't even invite me. I'm like, this was my show. This was fucking my show. You know?
Did they invite everybody else?
Yes. And it's like,
wait a minute. Because I know I don't listen to it anymore. I don't like it, but, really? They invited like Greg and those guys?
It wasn't like they were on. They like all did little pieces, you know, like little segments.
But you were not included?
No, it's like I've just been erased from this show, and that hurts me because it's like,
well, that's low class. That's shit. IGN, fuck you.
It's like I just don't think I'm the person. I'm not the toxic person that I'm made out to be. And in fact, no offense, the show is the most popular when I was on it.
Were, and you're not. But even if you were, that is Bush League. That is not the behavior of a classy gentleman with my Victorian sensibilities. I'm sorry.
I have Victorian sensibilities as well, so I appreciate that.
No, that's bullshit, man. Let me ask you this about real quick.
Sure.
Because I don't want to stay on Kind of Funny forever, but it kind of goes back to what you were saying about media. Is it, and you probably don't even track this, but do you think, if you do track it, do you think it's a correct read that Kind of Funny is becoming less successful as the years go on?
Yes.
Right. And do you think it's because Greg put something out, and this may be why he doesn't talk to me anymore, where he says, I want honest feedback. This was like 18 months ago. And he tweets this out. I want honest feedback. What's good about our show? What's bad about it? What can we improve? And I wrote and I said, man, I like you. I think you're great. I think you're a really funny guy. I said, but your stuff has gotten very vanilla. I'm like, I get that you guys, maybe you and Colin don't work together, but you're at your best when there's a little bit of a rough edge around you. But a straight man is only or a comedian is only as good as a comedian when they have their straight man to sort of amplify what it is that they're saying. But without that, you're surrounded by a bunch of people that are Greg Miller light. And Greg Miller lights. Anyway,
a little double entendre, yeah.
There you go, yeah. But anyway, and that's what I said. But that's what I think is hurting them, is that I don't listen to their show anymore, and I used to. Even after you left, I used to a little bit, but now it just feels so benign. Like it doesn't feel genuine or heartfelt or honest. It feels very much like GamePro magazine without the funny characters and the good rating system, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. And hey, dude, like, it's weird because I know that Greg has, and people still love him. It's like, he is funny. He's very smart.
He's a really funny guy.
He is. And and like his belly laughing and like all of that. Like I've had a lot of fun with him. And that's what surprised me too about kind of the more vanilla nature of, or like maybe the more PC nature of their content is like, and this is the stuff that I'll never talk about because it would be taken out of context, is like some of the most inappropriate shit I've ever heard come out of someone's mouth is out of Greg's, and it's funny.
Yeah.
And out of other people too. Nick is incredibly inappropriate,
Right.
But it's funny. And what you say behind closed doors or what you say to each other to make each other laugh doesn't define you, nor is it something you necessarily need to say publicly. Those are like, that's why I was a little surprised by that, where I'm like, yeah, my joke in quotes was, inappropriate or badly timed, but I'm like, we've said so many, if people, that's the funny thing, Jaffe, if someone just took the time and listened to Podcast Beyond from the beginning all the way to the 300, they would hear so much shit that I think it would blow them away. And
you're too classy of a guy to do it. But if I were sitting in your chair, I would say free Patreon for life for the first listener that edits a compilation of Beyond 1 until the day Greg and I left of just the shit that today would not fly coming out of their mouths. And then you get Patreon membership for life, highest tier. But I want that fucking videotape, or I want that audio.
Yeah, but the point is that like, and I don't care. Like it was a place and time thing. No one did anything wrong. I don't bring it. I'm not going to bring it up because I don't want to hurt anyone.
You just did. No, but
no, because I've said that. No, I've said that in the past. Like,
I'm not saying you want to hurt anyone, but I think look. Are you in therapy or no?
Not right now. No, I see a psychiatrist, but not a psychologist.
Okay. I only ask because, I mean, you know, I'm a big fan of therapy. I'm a fan of psychiatry. I'm a fan of psychology. I think it should be normal for most people. The idea that you can go through life on this planet without needing an objective, trained person to listen to some of your shit it's ridiculous that it's shamed in this culture.
I agree.
It's the most bizarre thing in the world to me. But that said, I ask because, you know, it's clear you're still carrying a burden with this, and even the fact that you're saying you don't get credit. I mean, I don't know if you know. Like, first of all, for me, I don't care about credit because the people giving credit, I don't care about. Right? It's like I didn't discover apathy, but I had apathy delivered unto me as a gift by chemicals, the universe, who knows. And the minute I stopped giving a fuck except about my kids and people who I'm trying to speak to that I care about, life got a hell of a lot easier. But that said, though, I don't know if you know how loved you are in the terms of your fans, in terms of what you offer people. So when you say you're not getting credit, I'm sure that's painful a little bit, but goodness gracious, I mean, you do realize you won, right? I mean, you're aware of that?
Yeah, I do say that specific things sometimes, and I am aware of that, but I am also and you're right, but I'm also mindful of, and I'm sure you are too, of some sense of posterity and fairness, right? Like,
I'm not.
I am. I mean, I believe
that's fair,
maybe it's because I studied history and I'm really into the past and all of that, but like, at some point a record is written or a record is told or put down, and it is what happened. It's a chronicle. And
right.
It hurts me for a great deal to be erased from things that I built, you know, like, and I'm going to take that personally. It's not a matter of caring about who's saying it or not. It's just about,
right.
I could hate a person to the maximum extent. I don't really hate anyone, but I could dislike someone, but I'm not going to try to take away what they did. That's like, at the end of the day, kind of all you have. I know that you have your spirituality and your mind and your family and all of that, but as far as your legacy and your line and what you leave behind when you go into oblivion one day is the record, right? And I know it's silly to some people, but it matters to me. I put a lot of hard work and effort and love and of my life into things, and I don't want credit for doing it by myself. I'm part of a team, and I've been erased from the team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
know
get me
that
wrong.
people love me, but
I think it's absolutely shitty that, I mean, even the Beyond thing, I did not know that they were covering other people and just ignored you. I mean, they should really fucking be ashamed of themselves. And unless you want me not to, you goddamn right, I'm going to tweet right when I get off this to IGN and make it public that it's like, you guys are out of your fucking minds.
Well, you don't have to do that, but
I don't have to do that.
No, but you
I want to do that.
I'm not your dad. I mean, you can do it, but
Yeah.
but the
but so I get it. I get it why you would be upset. I absolutely get that. But yeah, the legacy thing for me doesn't really where it's all going away. I mean, it's, you know, the world's going to explode. Yeah, who cares? I mean, really?
Yeah, I get that. It's a little nihilistic for me, but I do understand that.
Think about there was a time where, like, the guy who was the biggest alpha caveman in his little tribe, people were like, this guy is going to be remembered forever. He has done, you know, he showed us how to replicate fire dependably. He's the shit. Nobody knows who the fuck he is.
Yeah, he's gone. He's gone to history.
Yeah, right. So nobody cares. But, you know, do you miss doing your history show? My theory was, and somebody said I was wrong, because when I started doing shows and stuff after Bartlett Jones, I started doing weird news, supernatural stuff, you know, just the underbelly of society, because I find that stuff fascinating. Yeah. And I loved it, but I couldn't make a go of it in terms of building an audience. I couldn't get any real traction that I could see it being sustainable. So my initial thought was, maybe because I was listening to some of your original, what did you call? It was Colin's Last Stand. That was the show, yeah. And then you did it for a little bit, and then you had fireside chats where you brought, the last one I heard that was historically based, I want to say you had like a constitutional expert or... Yeah,
it was probably like a professor or something, yeah.
Right, but then those kind of went away. Was that just a ratings issue? It's like, I love them, but, you know, you can't really sustain that because people aren't as interested. Yeah,
I guess it's probably two or three things. The first thing is that, like, the history and political stuff was interesting, and it was growing, and I was doing good traffic, but I didn't feel like I personally had what it took to sustain. I didn't want to do what it would have taken, which was to like be a partisan and an ideologue and all of that. And I wasn't interested in that. So I was really scared off of politics just by the reaction of the it's just very toxic and it was making me unhappy. But Fireside Chats went away, honestly, because we were talking about the thing with Bob earlier and just others like crazy people. Oh, no,
online. I know why that one went away.
So I like doing, so this is kind of me meeting halfway now where I can kind of do some of the interviews on Sacred Symbols Plus and work that in. But so it wasn't so much, people wanted me to come back to gaming and I didn't know it was going to do so well. I mean, it's doing awesome.
I'm glad you did, but
thank you. But it's a lot of, I also needed to get it out of my system. I'm glad that I did because I always wondered if long before Kind of Funny existed, I always wondered, can I do politics? Do I have it in me to be a pundit or like, a talking head and I don't. I mean, the answer is I don't. So
why not? I saw you and Dave Rubin. I actually heard somebody's, people, people have so many different narratives about why things happen that aren't true. Someone's like, Jaffe got fired from Sony. And
right.
I'm like, no, I never got fired from Sony ever. But they're like, Colin wanted to be Dave Rubin and Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, but they were like, we don't want you in this club. And they kicked him out. So he had to run back to gaming. I'm like, I don't think that's what happened at all.
No, that's not true. Dave Rubin's a personal friend of mine. I mean,
I saw you on Dave Rubin. It was great. But so you're on that show and you're going, I don't want to be what he is. Why not? What was the reason?
Well, because first of all, Dave's more of like because it's funny that those names came up because those are like three different people to me. Like, Jordan Peterson's a philosopher and a scholar,
but they're all out there making social media and videos that are about very specific points of view.
Dave is a Larry King type figure to me, right? Okay. I think he's the guy that, I mean, he has his own opinions, but I think more he's like he schmoozes and brings people over into his office or his studio and talks, talks about their book or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not what I wanted to do ever.
Okay.
What I wanted to be more of like just like a pundit, like a normal, political pundit, put out research videos and say things that I thought were relevant and interesting. But
you wanted to be on the Sunday shows,
right? Exactly. Okay, like it's a lot of work. But I just didn't find it fulfilling. It wasn't. I'm really glad because I would still be wondering today probably if I didn't do it. Now at least I can check that box. Like I don't have to wonder anymore. I didn't have it in me. I didn't want to do it. I probably could have hung around. And also it's worth noting, like I got a couple of very substantial offers from big companies to go do it for them, and I didn't want to do it. So
I mean, working for yourself, my God, man, why would you ever want to go back if you don't have to?
No, never. I'll never not work. I can never do that again. Never. That's like my biggest fear.
Yeah. It's an absurd concept. Okay. You talked about Oblivion, and you're relatively conservative, at least compared to me.
Yes.
So do you believe in God?
I didn't for a long, so I grew up Catholic, but then I called myself atheist for like most of my teens and my 20s. I didn't even get confirmed into my 20s. These days, I feel like it's more like a deism or an agnosticism. I think atheism's a little too. First of all, I don't like atheists. I always say that, like, I just find atheists really annoying. They're like Dark Souls fans. They're just really annoying people. So like, I don't want to be. That should
be your new merch. Give me a t-shirt. I'll wear that fucking t-shirt.
So it's just like, I don't, but also it's like, it's kind of a little too conclusive. I don't have all the knowledge or evidence or.
That's right.
So I don't believe deism's really attractive to me for two reasons, because number one, the founders were really into deism, this kind of this philosophy.
Would you educate me? I'm an agnostic. I know what agnosticism is. I don't know what deism is. What is
deism?
That?
Is like this idea, this like Enlightenment idea that God is like exists and orders the universe, but doesn't know or acknowledge that anything's happening. Like he's set it into motion, and there is some sort of power, but he's uninterested in what's going on after that.
Gotcha.
I mean, that's kind of a reductive way of looking at it, but that's basically what it is. And I found that very, very attractive. It's like, well,
it makes sense. It makes things make a lot more sense.
I don't believe in Jesus existed, but I don't believe that he's the son of God or whatever. Like I don't believe that, but I'm culturally Catholic. My family's very Catholic still. I respect religious people and religion, but to me, I really struggle with that. You seem to be kind of the same mind, right, with your agnosticism?
I don't struggle. I mean, I 100% do not believe in the Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, any God that's been laid out and presented as this is the answer, I think is horseshit.
Right.
I'm just like, that's an absurd concept. What you believe is absurd as Zeus. as absurd as what the Celtics. I mean, come on, really? I just think it's a cult, all of them. I appreciate what it brings to people until what it brings to people becomes harmful. But I appreciate, life is, like I said, I mean, the older you get, I love life. I'm not a nihilist. I think life is good, but it's also horrifically cruel and chaotic and messy and just a bunch of fucking noise that may very well mean nothing. And if we allowed ourselves to really sit in that too long, without, whether you're talking about some kind of meditation practice or therapy or religion, we would probably lose our fucking minds. Because if you really look around and you let the artifice of society fall and you realize what is happening, you would lose your fucking mind, because nothing makes sense, right? I mean, there was a story. Did you ever hear about this guy? He wrote this thesis or this manifesto, and he told his family, he went to New York, I think it was New York, and he told his family, he got an apartment, he's like, I'm writing this book. And he spent like 3 years researching and writing this fucking book and everything. And then the day it was finished, he told his roommate, okay, I finished it. And he went down, I want to say it was Yale University, but he went down to one of the big universities, and right in front of a bunch of kids who were taking a tour for the fall, he shot himself to death on the steps of the campus main building. And when you go back and you can see it on the internet and you read this manifesto, you can't really argue with it. He's basically saying, I've spent the last 3 years researching the philosophers, physics, all this shit, very bright guy. And he's like, my conclusion is this is meaningless. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. And that led him to take that really what I still consider tragic, awful act,
sure,
which was to end his own life. And so I do think, I very much believe, I don't think there's nothing going on. I don't think there's definitely shit we don't understand. Scientists literally 4 months ago discovered a brand new particle that they had. I mean, come on. I mean, there's so much shit we have.
It's amazing.
We're morons to sit around and think we have all the data to assess the meaning of life. That's a ridiculous concept. But I also think that, we have to be wise enough to say we should slowly, and we're doing it organically as people move away from religion, but the faster we let go of these Iron Age, Bronze Age ideas, and embrace reality that we know it as, I think the sooner we're going to be a happier species and a kinder species and a species that survives when the asteroid comes, because we will have been able to work together to get off the fucking planet.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Yeah. But yeah, as for God though, I mean, I'm agnostic. I'd love to believe there was something. I was talking to this guy, Andrew, who's very religious. He's a Southern Baptist. And he's telling me that when you die in the Bible, it promises you a golden mansion. And I'm like, what kind of capitalist horse shit is that? It's like, I mean, seriously, it's just like, you're promised a big fucking, and I'm like, is that metaphorical or literal? He's like, no, you get a mansion. And I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
It's also just, all the way from the Abrahamic religions like Christianity and Judaism all the way to, I find the more Eastern stuff a little bit more palatable to me because it's more about spirituality and kind of like
that's right.
You're with nature and all of that. But yeah, generally speaking, I feel like I like the exploration of the spirituality on an individual basis, and also kind of the idea that, well, to the point of oblivion, this is it. Like, you better do what you, whether or not you want to do anything useful. I mean, that's my whole thing, is like, I don't think you have to do great things. I just think you have to kind of try to stay in the moment and realize that you're on the clock and it's ticking away, and the mansion in the sky or the virgins that you get or whatever the case. I mean, it's like, it's almost certainly not going to happen, and you're not going to know when you die anyway. So you might as well just live.
I mean, that's the funny thing is when you die, if it's what we think it is, or at least what we assume it is based on evidence, which it may not be, but if it is and it's nothing, if it is oblivion, as you say, that's the ironic part, is you won't even know you're dead. Like, you won't even have that moment of, oh, this is death. You'll be breathing and you'll be maybe scared or curious and then you're done. I mean, that's the funniest part about it, is there's no awareness that survives if it is oblivion.
And that's what's scary. I mean, and that brings us full circle back to why with no permanence, right?
Yeah.
Then we do have things like posterity, and then we also do have
but
things
that's
like
not permanent either. It depends how wide you step back on the scale, right?
Right.
I mean, Earth is, the fact that all these people that did stuff for posterity, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. How many of them do we remember? How many will we remember in 10,000 years from now?
Sure.
Probably very few. What are you playing right now, Colin? What are you playing?
I just platinumed Outriders.
I saw that. Why do people hate that game? I don't understand it.
I love it. Did you play it?
I do too. Yeah. I haven't finished it, but I heard you talking about the story, and I agree. I tweeted when I was playing it. I'm like, why are people shitting on this story? This is a really interesting story. When she goes into cryo and comes, I'm like, what? Wait, this is totally cool.
I love it.
People are like, this is fucking stupid. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I totally disagree. I was surprised, about actually how good the lore was and how good. I like it. And then messing around a little bit with Returnal, which I'm not super crazy about, and then
you go to hell. You blasphemy.
But I got to really sit down with it.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
How's your time? Because I would love to go into pure video game talk for a little bit, but if you got to go, we've been talking for a while.
Yeah, I do have to wrap it up shortly by 3.
You know what? Just, fuck it, Colin. Let's, you got to just
Well, do you want to come back and just talk about games next time?
That's totally up to you.
Oh, I would love to do that.
Because I want to talk about Returnal. I want to talk about Game Pass with you. I
have all these notes that I wrote down that I never even got to.
So why don't you come on my show?
Okay.
Whenever you want, whenever you're free, come on tonight if you want. I don't care, whenever you want. And that's the best part too about, what I'm doing now is something happens and let's go live. I mean, I know people are saying, Jaffe, you really need like a schedule. I'm like, yeah.
No, but I think it's hard. You know what I really love, by the way, about
Colin says he can come on tonight. We're doing it tonight.
Yeah, tonight I can't do. But Jaffe,
no, I know. Yeah.
What I will say is that because I tune into your show, I don't watch almost any content, gaming content, because I'm a little afraid to, because I don't want to find it in my own content. But I like you, and I've been watching a little bit of your stuff, and I love how ballsy you are. Not only to talk about what you talk about, but also to just take calls. I don't think people realize how bold that is, and I love that you give these guys patience and enough rope to hang themselves. I think it's very interesting. I very much in tune with what you're doing, and I think it's great.
I appreciate that. Well, thank you. I appreciate you watching. Yeah, the calls are they're hit or miss. I don't have any help right now. I mean, I have some mods who are wonderful, but I don't have like someone who can really properly screen and stuff and go, hey, Jaffe, out of all these calls, these are the 4 that we think are going to yield something really sweet. So I'll just kind of, as long as they don't call in and fuck with the mods, I'll be like, all right, put them on. And, I'm pretty short. I'll be like, yeah, you're boring. Goodbye. But I like them, I think. And sometimes they bring viewership down. I mean, I can watch the numbers in real time.
Right.
But it's, to keep a show going, and I go sometimes 3-4 hours, to keep a show going, and keep it genuinely engaging. And it's not always, it's very hard to do.
Definitely.
The more trapezes that swing your way that might spin you off into a fun 20-minute segment, you're so grateful for. So sometimes I'm just like, please, for the love of God, give me a call.
Yeah.
That moves us off this topic of, why people who don't like Returnal are going to hell, things like that. But I want to talk about that because I think that's a fascinating game. I think the price is fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
I think its success and or lack of success is going to be fascinating. I think how it launched with Second Extinction on Game Pass, which is totally the opposite of Returnal in terms of sort of one is junk food, but fun junk food, and the other really is and I like it. I appreciate you don't, but it feels more like a proper meal. I love that dichotomy, and I love that both of them are competing in the same weekend on very different delivery systems. I gotta get your thoughts on that. So
yeah, we'll talk. Let's do it later this week because I agree. First of all, I love talking about games too, and yeah, so I'll come do your show and we'll talk all about that stuff. And I've not, hopefully by the time we do talk, I will have played it more. I don't know that I've played enough to have a conclusive, I'm a huge Housemarque fan, but have a conclusive thing to say about it. So
how long have you played it? Have you gotten past the first level?
No,
I'm sorry, I will not call it a biome. They're levels.
Yeah, levels.
They're fucking levels.
No, I got to the first boss a couple of times, but I'm bad at the game too. So that's, and I talked about that on the show where I'm like, I'm just not naturally good at this game, so I have to sit with it a little bit. But we'll do that. And
Resident Evil. Have you played Resident Evil?
So I bought that and I just sat down with it and played it for like the first half an hour.
Okay.
And then
I hate to say this because I think it's a what is it called? Am I using this phrase right? A dereliction of duty when people say, "Oh, give it time, the game gets better." I think it's like, fuck you, motherfucker. You're charging $60. You don't know how to hook somebody in the first 20 minutes. That's on you. But that said, though, the two demos of that game are pretty much the opening 40 minutes of that game, and the demos left me incredibly cold. I was just like, this is, I don't know if I'm going to finish this. And then it does get really fucking good about an hour in. So
cool. Yeah, it felt a little slow and a little lumbering. I was actually saying that to my girlfriend. She's not a fan, but she was watching it, and I was kind of rattling off. I'm like, think about the beginning of Resident Evil 2, how iconic that is at the convenience store, or
that's right.
Resident Evil 4 walking through the woods. I'm like, I don't feel it here. And that's why I shut it off, So I'm going to get back to it. It's supposed to be short. So we'll have much to talk about on your show, but
all right, good. Let's do it then. So listen, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Thank you, Jaffe. I appreciate your time.
Anytime. I'm looking forwd to the responses. I got to go do Greg's show right now. So we'll talk about you. That's a joke, of course. I'm tired, man. All right. I'm going to go take a nap, then I'm going to wake up. I'm going to do my own show. But I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you, Jaffe. Thank you so much. And thank you all out there for listening to us. All right, my friend. Be good.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, guys. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and Burbank, California, USA. The show was conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun Maldonado. Sacred Symbols' executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.